I'm Nathan.
And I'm Joe. Today we're going to take a look at the collection of Brett Black. And you're going to see a Millennium Falcon that will definitely make your dark side rise.
I think it started with seeing the movie, and just because it was so different for the time. There was nothing like it. It was just so different. And that's what I loved about it, because it was fantasy. You know, it was science fiction, but it was fantasy. And before that time, I just really wasn't into science fiction that much. But as I got older and as time progressed, then it went from watching the movie like anybody else does in front of the screen to going back and seeing how it was made, who made it, why they made it, when they made it, how much they made it for, and everything that went into it. Now, it's not just Star Wars, but I like doing that for any movie. My mom and dad were big movie buffs. They used to make me watch, you know, Casablanca and Gone with the Wind and Godfather and everything when I was little. I used to just hate that. Now I'm glad that they did, because I have such a respect for some of the classic movies. Star Wars was the same way. Star Wars is just a movie that I loved, and I just, you know, immersed myself and found out everything I could about it. But yeah, I'd have to say that as I got older, it was like a progression that I love finding out more about what goes into making a motion picture. So I have casting tapes of all the original trilogy, of who was up for it, you know, black and white stuff. Books of why it was made, and, you know, where they shot it, and who directed it, what directors were up for, what director Lucas wanted to direct Empire and Jedi that they turned him down. And I mean, just so much information like that I just love. For any movie, but Star Wars in general, because that's what I collect. I like the fully produced stuff. I like the Hollywoodized type stuff. I like fan films. I've been in fan films, won awards with fan films, but that's not really what I like as much. I appreciate them. I think they're cool, and you know, people have to get their start somewhere. And me personally, I'd rather just concentrate on just the stuff that Hollywood turns out. John Hudgens was a local director in East Tennessee. I met him at Dragon Con because I was doing the Star Wars panels, and he was doing the Babylon 5 panels. And we met, found out we were both from Knoxville, struck up a conversation, and he started doing fan films. And then the one that I am in, he did, right before Episode 2 came out, he did Jedi Hunter. And the Jedi Hunter is a take on the Crocodile Hunter, and it basically follows Boba Fett as he hunts down Jedi. And it's all filmed in East Tennessee. He used my Yoda in the movie, and he asked me if I wanted to be part of it. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I ended up playing, I'm called the Volunteer Jedi, because in it I have an orange lightsaber for Tennessee, you know, which is not my favorite because I'm not a Tennessee fan, but anyway. But yeah, I get killed, but yeah, I'm a Volunteer Jedi. So I am on IMDb for there. But what's cool about that was that was right before Episode 2, so for Celebration 3, I think, that one was in LA, they showed that as competition for the fan film competition for Celebration before Episode 2 came out, and it won. It won the George Lucas Award. So John got money and prizes and awards and trophies and everything else like that, and we just basically got a pat on the back.
Do you have a character that is your favorite or that you relate to?
I've always connected with Luke. I mean, Luke's always been my go-to character, because, you know, that's kind of where the original trilogy was based on. Everything's kind of around, you know, Luke. And I just think Luke Skywalker is just, you know, he's just cool. He's just, you know, he's a badass Jedi.
One of the things I've been thinking about as we've been talking is you collected well before the advent of the internet, before eBay or any of the other
old-fashioned way, yeah.
Star Wars sites. Could you describe to us, before the time of eBay, which is almost like before the age of man, what was collecting like, and how did it change with the addition of the internet and sites like eBay?
Everything changed. Oh my God. I mean, when I started collecting, from that time, from when I had mom and dad buying me stuff, you know, and that type of collector, to the time that I could order my own stuff and, you know, become my own collector in probably the mid to late 80s. There was no internet. eBay came around in 95, I believe, and I was just starting college in 90. So there was 4 years in there, or 5 years in there, that there was no internet. You had to do it the old-fashioned way. So when I wanted to order something or found something, it was through other collectors. You had to write letters. There wasn't really too many conventions going on back then. There was Star Trek conventions, but all these multimedia conventions weren't around. So I would basically, it was like a mail order type stuff. You get catalogs through different comic book shops.
Right.
There was one called Intergalactic Trading Company in Florida that I ordered a lot of stuff from. And they would send you a catalog, which would take a week to get there.
Right.
You'd pick out what you want. You'd write down what you want to order. You'd send in your money in a check or whatever. And they would fill the order and send it back, hopefully. A lot of the times, I would get another thing in the mail saying, we don't have this item anymore. And they'd refund your money.
Right.
It's like, well, it was in the catalog. Well,
right.
It was in the catalog, but a month later, when it was still in the catalog, they were sold out of it. So, I mean, it's not an instantaneous type thing where you get online now and it's like, okay, well, we have 7 of these. Well, I can get 7 of them if I want to.
Right.
So they would run out of stock so fast, but you didn't know that until you placed the order. So, it was hard to do back in the day, but I did it. A lot of my posters that I have, I did it the old-fashioned way. I'd get a catalog through the mail. They'd tell me how much they wanted. They would say if it was in stock, and then I would call them and place my order that way.
And you said you travel a lot for work. Do you ever set aside time to scout out the different collector shops?
So, yeah, I do that when I do conventions too. Every time I do conventions in Raleigh or Columbus, Ohio, or Atlanta, I'll definitely find out, or I'll Google where the local comic book shops are. I'll do that all the time. Yeah, there's a lot of cool shops.
Any particular place that is your favorite? Like if that comes up on your work schedule, you're starting to smile because you know that particular city might have a huge collection base or a huge retail base.
My favorite over the years was always Cincinnati, because Cincinnati, Ohio is where Kenner used to be.
Right.
And so you would go into any toy store or any comic book shop and you would always find something laying in the aisles or on the shelf that was old school from somebody who worked at Kenner, like one of the original Kenner catalogs from the 80s or something. Or a toy, some prototype, like the case came from Kenner or came from Cincinnati, C-3PO case.
Yeah.
But again, with time and because of the internet and all that stuff that's happened over the years, all those shops have kind of gone by the wayside and have gone out of business because they just can't stay in business with the overhead.
Right.
They can't pay rent and stuff when they can sell stuff cheaper, not having a store online.
Right.
So unfortunately, all the shops and stores that I used to go to years ago are not there anymore.
Do you think that loses some
definitely.
aspects of
it used to be so much more fun going up to Cincy and doing a show and then going and hitting up all the shops, and seeing what you could find. There's very few shops anymore. Even the ones here in Knoxville are cool, but they don't have that much stuff because they know they can sell it more if you put it on eBay.
Have you ever attempted to jump the wall at the Skywalker Ranch?
Funny enough, I was at Skywalker Ranch this past September when I went to go see Steve. And the very first thing that I did when I got into California and was in the hotel was made the trek to Skywalker Ranch. I knew exactly where it was. I didn't know how far I could get because I was in a rental car. And Matt was with me, so he was kind of guiding me where to go. And I'd already seen that episode of Big Bang where, Sheldon tries to jump the wall and run up towards Skywalker Ranch and he gets arrested and stuff. My mom's like, "Oh my God, you're going to make the news and stuff." And I knew exactly where the buildings were located and stuff. I basically got as far as the gate. I got as far as the gate, and it was during the week, so I saw all these people going through the staff entrance.
Right. And
so I pulled up, but I didn't go through the staff entrance. I just pulled up to the gated thing, and then one of the guys walked out, and he's like, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "Well, obviously I don't work here, but yeah, exactly. You see nothing. Not the droid you're looking for."
Right.
But I said, I'm just a fan. I'm just here because of the Skywalker Ranch. And he just kind of smiled. He probably sees it all the time. He's like, "Okay, we'll turn around." So I turned around and left. But I took a lot of pictures on the way, and Matt was too. We were taking pictures of the house or the clubhouse. You couldn't see the actual house, the white Skywalker house,
Right.
way back there. The studios of Skywalker Sound and ILM and all the old buildings, you could see in the distance, but you couldn't get anywhere close to it. So, but the cool thing is that now that they moved ILM and Lucasfilm to the Presidio, which is north of San Francisco, I spent a lot of time there. I went down there, and it's not really open to the public, but they have a little bit of a display area that you can walk into, and they have some Star Wars items on display, and that was cool. So I was able to get pictures of the big Yoda fountain in front of the Presidio, and before the workers walked back into the back of Lucasfilm, there's a big sign that says Lucasfilm Limited, so I got pictures of that, and all the geeky stuff that, all the workers there were probably like, oh dear Lord, not another one of him. And of course I had a big shirt that said Lucasfilm Limited on it.
Right.
All those guys are probably like, Jesus, what a geek. But that was one of my things that I always wanted to do. That was one of the things on my bucket list that I always wanted to do before I died, was go out to California and go to Skywalker Ranch, go to Lucasfilm, and see Stan Sweet's collection. And I did it all.
Earlier you were saying that you really identified with Luke. What about that character did you connect with?
I just think because he was just a younger guy. The possibilities, the things that he struggled with in the original trilogy. Seeing his aunt and uncle burned to death and having to leave the planet, and then finding out Vader's his father, and just all this internal struggle that I think everybody goes through. But he's a strong character. He's a very strong character. He's able to keep it together, and I don't know. I think it's probably because he is the younger male character, and I just somehow connected with him more than I did with Ben or Han or Leia or somebody like that. He's just a very strong character.
Or Chewie.
Like that. Or Chewie, exactly. There's a lot of cool characters. I like them all. But Luke has always been one of the ones that I would definitely put as, he is the main Star Wars character.
Collecting isn't just a thing that you do. It's not just, here, let me have a bunch of stuff. Like, there's obviously that emotional side to it. There's things that you enjoy about it. Mm-hmm. What about the collecting calls to you? Kind of like the Force called to Luke.
I don't know. I think a little bit of it has to do with that I've done it so long, is that I kind of want to continue with it because it's something that I've always done. It makes me feel good. It makes me relaxed. And I want to continue because it not only does it bring pleasure to my life, but I almost want to see it to an end. You had talked earlier about, would you be happy as far as if you got these last couple of things, quit collecting. Out of the handful of items that I'm looking for, all of them are crew items. A couple of them are crew items from the original trilogy, and two of the items, or one at least, is one of the crew items from Episode 1. It's the hardest Episode 1 crew item to get, and I have come so close to getting it, actually just a few months ago, and the guy sold it out from underneath me to another collector who offered him more money. And again, it's something that I will get, but it always slips through my fingers lately. It'd be nice to say, I don't want to collect anymore, get out of it. But I do like that thrill of the hunt and always be looking for something. But I think that's the whole reason of why collecting is still fun for me, is that I just want to see it out. I just want to be able to collect until I am very happy with the stuff that I have, and I'm able to walk away and say I don't want to do it anymore. Since there's so many movies now coming out, though, when I thought that Episode 3 was going to be it, and there was the 6 movies and that was it, I could have seen myself not collecting anymore. I really did. I really thought that to a point there'd be something that I'd be like, okay, well, I'm done with this. I'll sell it all and retire and, live comfortably somewhere. But now that there's so many other things coming out, I don't see it anywhere anytime soon, giving it up. But yeah, I just do it because it makes me feel good. And I just like the feeling that no matter what I go through in my life, what type of stressful situations, jobs, marriage, relationships, moving. My collection's always going to be with me. It never changes, never gripes, it never, criticizes me. And I can always come to my collection and almost just feel accepted when I'm here. That makes me feel good.
What would you say is your sort of comfort food piece?
I'd have to say probably the Falcon. Every time I think about why I do collect, or should I continue to collect, or is it worth collecting? I always look over at the Falcon and realize that I put so much money into that piece, but it's something that I've wanted for such a long time. And Paul made it specifically for me, and there's nothing else out there that's like that. It just makes it all worth the while, I guess, when I look at that piece and think, wow, that's just such an impressive piece. That's just kind of the pinnacle right there for me.
Tell us a little bit about the Falcon piece. Tell us some of the backstory on it.
It's made by Paul Francis. He's a prop master, worked in Hollywood all through the 90s, early 2000s, and he had all of his stuff on display in Dandridge, and he was always not a collector of Star Wars stuff, but a fan of Star Wars, and he knew that we had a collectors group called the Tennessee Star Wars Collectors Group here in Knoxville that I was president of, and he came to one of our meetings and became a good close friend with him, and then over the years was able to go up and see some of the stuff that he had worked on in Hollywood. And he had a lot of nice pieces from other movies, and he'd always wanted to build the Falcon from scratch. Now, to find a scratch-built Falcon is, you can't do it. You have to find someone who's going to spend months and months and months doing it. Master Replicas did make a 3-foot Falcon, but the thing is that Master Replicas Falcon is not made entirely by hand. So Paul basically said that he wanted to make the Falcon, and if he made it, would I be interested in purchasing it from him? And I said absolutely. So it took him about 9 months to basically make the frame, order all the original pieces, and the way he did that is he got a hold of Steve Gawley. Steve Gawley was the original model maker that worked for Lucasfilm ILM back in the 70s, early 80s. And over a period of 8 to 10 months, he built that Falcon for me. Then when he had it completed, he called me up there, and I checked it out and loved every bit of it, and that was it. I've always been a very organized person and very tedious as far as when I was little, playing with my stuff, and then when I was done, I'd put it back up on the shelf. I wasn't one of those people that would buy stuff and then leave it out in the sandbox somewhere or leave it over the neighbors. Never did that. Always took very good care of my stuff, so I think that just kind of carried over to my collecting side of it. And when I buy something, I make sure I take care of it and put it away, and if I want to display it, I display it properly. Like my button collection, I put all my buttons together, and if they're glass items, I make sure that they're put all in one place or up on a shelf somewhere. All my frames all have the UV protection so they won't fade. I don't have a lot of light in here for that particular reason too, so it doesn't fade a lot of my posters. It takes a little bit of doing to have a lot of stuff and then be able to show it off correctly. I could pretty much say that's kind of an art form into itself, because if you had all this stuff and you just kind of threw it in there, what fun it would be for that, for me or for anybody else to come in and look at it. I want to be able to have it on display and preserved in a way that when someone walks in, they're able to walk in and get a good recollection of, wow, this is a nice collection. I like the way it's displayed. It's not overpowering. It's not just gaudy, but it's nicely done. It's displayed in a way that should be deserved for a collection, for nice stuff.
So which part do you enjoy more, the collecting, the finding and obtaining an item, or when you have it, displaying it?
That's a very good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. But I'd have to say that displaying it is probably right up there with actually getting it. Because once I get it, or even before I get it, I'll have gotten it from another collector or got it off eBay or something, and before I even get it, I'm finding a place for it. So I guess that's part of being a collector right there. Even before I got my hat, I had that space in my display cabinet for that hat because I knew it was on its way. That episode 3 director's chair thing that's laying on the table over there that I just got, the director's chair back for episode 3. I just got that a few days ago. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So it's like, where am I going to put it? But I will find a place for it. I will be able to display it. It's just a matter of time before I find where I want to put it.
What part or piece in your collection kind of stirs those original emotions when you started collecting?
It would probably go back to some of the pieces that my brother had, my older brother. As he got older, he got out of collecting, and I was able to purchase some things from him. That's why I have 2 of everything, of all the original stuff, because he just kind of grew out of it, grew up and got into girls and money and drinking and things like that, and needed money, so I was buying stuff off of him the whole time. So a lot of that stuff, a lot of the figures that I remember playing with him, and the toys along with him. The other thing is that about 2004, 2005, there was a collector in East Tennessee named Matthew Jackson, and he was killed in a car accident. And his family didn't know what to do with his collection, and they got a hold of me to help go through it and put monetary values on everything and say what was worth money and what he needs to sell. And then they put it up for auction at one of the local auction houses, actually in Maryville. And that was pretty close to my heart. I mean, I didn't know him specifically. I knew of him, but I'd never met him before. He was a lot younger than me. But I was very impressed with how much stuff he actually had. He had a lot of stuff. And I spent I think there was 3 weekends in a row that I spent my own free time down in Maryville at this auction house, going through boxes and boxes and boxes of this guy's stuff. And as I went through and was categorizing and saying this is what's a lot of the stuff's worth in his collection, some of the stuff he actually had was stuff that I didn't have. And of course his mom was like, "Oh, well, you find something that you want, you just go ahead and take it." I'm like, "Well, that's not right. I'm here to give you money for this stuff." So I'm like, I'll bid on it like everybody else does. So when it came to time to purchase things at this auction, when the auction finally came up in Maryville like a month later, I was actually lucky enough to get some things from his collection that I did not have, but belonged to someone that I was able to do that for the family. So that means a lot to me too. And that game that you pointed out in there, that original 1978 game, the very first Star Wars game they came up with, a little shooter game, Arcade Aces, I think is what it's called, Target Aces. That's his. I did not have one of those. And his was in extremely good condition with all the original stickers on it. And I bid on it and won. So that's, as far as going back to sentimental type stuff, that's, even though he wasn't someone that I knew in my life, as far as a family member goes, that was an honor that I was able to do that for the family and do that for him in honor of him.
What do you think makes Star Wars such a international hit?
I think when it gets down to it, it's just a simple story. It's good versus evil. It's the possibility. You have again in the instance of Star Wars, you have a little farm boy that you don't think is going to play an important role, and all of a sudden he goes on and what he ends up becoming and what he can do with his life. But when you get down to it, I think it's just a simple storyline. It's a very simple storyline. It's not detailed. It can be if you read the novels, you read a little bit more into it. Comics, obviously, Star Wars is a lot more in depth than people realize. But if they just watch Star Wars, the first movie, A New Hope, back in '77, sit down and watch it, it's a pretty simple storyline. You know, it's a boy that grows up and wants to get off the planet and go and save the princess and blows up the Death Star and everything's happy. You know, I mean, it's pretty simple. You know, so I think it's no matter what culture you're in, what religion you have, it's just a very easy thing to connect to.
So there we have it, the collection of Brett Black. Not only did we get to peer in his psyche and understand a little bit more about what it's like to be a collector,
we also got to take a look at the history and from a movie that we all have grown to love, from its humble beginnings into the international sensation that it now is.
Much like Luke Skywalker. So, until next time, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Joe. See you next time.